Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and today is Sunday, May 2nd, 2021, and I am broadcasting from lovely Costa Rica, Escazú, which is a suburb of San Jose. And I would like to start by saying thank you to all the listeners in the outer regions of the world that I'm not in, meaning that there are people listening to me in the UK, there are people listening to me in Africa, there are people listening to me I saw the Ivory Coast, there are people listening to me in Australia, and I just want to say thank you to people who I've never met, and to people who keep on keeping on. So thank you so much. I wanted to start with that this time because sometimes I end with that and I'm like, maybe they don't hear that. So, okay. So here we are, and it is May. Can you believe it? It's May. And we are now in the 5th month of 2021. And interestingly, I think it's been a complicated year because we are definitely, in the throes of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. And that has been, they're not together and conjunct per se, but they are in the same sign. And I think that people are still feeling a lot of intensity from last year. And it's like a boulder that just keeps rolling down a hill, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And a lot of people are not feeling better. Like I heard a number of times this week, wow, this has been a tough year. Wow, this has not been much better than last year. I think I said this last week or so, when the new year changed, everybody was like, yeah, 2021, let's get out of this 2020 business. And yeah, sure. It's definitely not gonna be the same year, but it doesn't mean that the circumstances, that happened in 2020 aren't going to go away. This is not like, oh, okay, we're going to sleep and waking up, it's a new day. To some degree, that's true. We have a fresh perspective. But I think more than anything, it's been a complicated year. When planets cluster, or as we call it in astrology, a stellium, we tend to feel that intensity, and it has been intense. And so since the beginning of the year, there have been stelliums, which is 3 or more planets in one sign. And it's been, last year we had the whole business in Capricorn, 3 planets in Capricorn, which were heavy hitters. But this year it's been like, there was one point where there were 6 planets in Aquarius. And, then there were like 4 or 5 planets in Pisces, and then they all went into Aries. We had 4 planets, 3 planets in Chiron, 4 planets in Chiron in Aries, and now we've got 4 planets in Taurus. But that's about to change because tomorrow night, the 3rd of May, and like before, depends on where you are. In my region of the world, it's going to be tomorrow night. And tomorrow night, Mercury goes into Gemini. So 1 planet will leave Taurus. Okay, so there are no planets in Gemini right now, and so Mercury is going to take the first leap into that sign. And Mercury rules Gemini. So this is we're getting better. We're starting to feel a little bit better. And actually, I feel the energy getting a little lighter. And while I don't exactly know why that is, it could be just a personal thing, because I talk to people and they're emotional and they're having a hard time, and they're not entirely and this is just people across the board who feel like, April, I was talking to friends yesterday here in Costa Rica, and they were like, April was really tough, like financially, it was really tough for us. And then I was talking to some, of my students, and they were like, well, I feel emotional. And then I was talking to, lots of different people with lots of different perspectives. So last week's full moon, I think, was a trigger for a lot of emotional stuff because it was in water. And everything was in Taurus, and the moon was in Scorpio. And so it was close to Uranus. It was opposite Uranus right after that, and that makes things more emotional. And then the next day, Pluto went retrograde, and Pluto ruled the full moon in Scorpio. So that was, I think, I felt a lot of intensity from that. I felt like a lot of goofy moon opposite Uranus stuff happened around the time of the full moon, and then it just felt not so much heavy, but it was emotional and it was deep. And then in the middle of the week, I felt it go a little lighter. And now Mercury is leaving Taurus, saying goodbye and going into its own sign of Gemini, which means already something's shifting. Because, one of the things that we pay attention to in astrology is what we call dispositorship. And right now, the dispositor will be Mercury in Gemini. And that's not been the case. It's been Neptune in Pisces, which is a little unclear. And then there's, Venus, who's still in Taurus, which is temporary, but Neptune's in Pisces for a long time. But one of the things that's important is that we pay attention to now Mercury's getting revved up and in its own sign. And it's going to be there till July 11th. And you're like, what? Now, 2 weeks of Mercury in Taurus, 2 weeks. And that's a very strange thing. It's like zip through the slowest sign in the zodiac. Okay, zip. And then when it goes into its own sign, which is a zippy sign, Gemini, it's not. It's not zipping through it. It's going to retrograde on the 30th of May at 24 degrees and 29th of May at 24 degrees and essentially stay there. It's going to retrograde. It's going to be a little more than 3 weeks, and then it's going to go direct, and it's going to spend like basically all of May and all of June in Gemini. And then it's going to spend the first, 11 days of July in Gemini. And, that's actually quite fascinating because it's going to rule the heavens for a while. So get ready for this. It's about words. It's about thinking. It's about information. It's about communication. It's about your ability to articulate what you want, what you need, what you're thinking, and get those words out. Get the words out into the world and take that moment. Take these from the 3rd to the 29th. Take that time and do what you need to do, because it's important. If you have details to process, do that, because once it goes retrograde, you're going to have to stop. If you're going to try something new, good to do it now. If the information comes to you under a Mercury retrograde, it's a little dodgy. So, and you never know. You never know. Like I said, and I always say it, I came to Costa Rica for the first time on a Mercury retrograde. So there you go. But for me, it was like going home. So, I guess it's back to a place where I had been some other time, some other dimension. So here we are on, Sunday, the night before Mercury goes into its own sign. And that is the first big change as Mercury hits its own place. Now, Venus is going to go into Gemini this week also. So that means that, as I sit here on Sunday night, 4 planets are in Taurus. Tomorrow night at this time, or maybe a little later, Monday night, Mercury will be in Gemini. There'll be 3 planets in Taurus. And then by Friday, Saturday the 8th, Venus will go into Gemini at night in the evening. And so that's 2 planets out of Taurus into Gemini. So the sun won't get there for a while. The sun won't go into Gemini till the 20th in the afternoon, this region of the world. And we are now looking at a place where, we're looking at things that are, a little more wordy, a little more intellectual, a little more articulating. And, what's interesting is when Mercury and Venus are traveling together in the same sign, and Mercury is going to slow down. So Venus is the slower moving planet. Mercury is going to slow down enough so that, because it's going retrograde, that it is going to be conjunct Venus about on the 28th. So the night of the 28th, Mercury and Venus are going to be conjunct. And then Mercury's going to go retrograde on the 29th, Saturday the 29th. And what's so interesting about this is that, Venus is going to keep moving and go into Cancer on June 2nd. But what's interesting is that Venus and Mercury are going to have a conversation as Mercury goes retrograde. Okay? Now, I don't see... Mercury's going to go backwards at that point, and Venus is going to move ahead. So that's it. They're having a conversation, which is going to trigger the Mercury retrograde. What's Venus? Well, Venus is money, but Venus is also relationships, and this is probably about relationships. So there is something about relationships and your relationship to money and money and relationships and all Venusian things, creativity, the things you desire. So thinking about that, it could well be that when Mercury and Venus catch up to one another at the end of the month, and then Mercury says, okay, bye Venus, and Venus pulls ahead in her pink convertible, Mercury's going to stay behind and ponder the information that it obtained from Venus about relationships. And so one of those things, there's going to be a duality of there's a dual thought process going on, and a review of that dual thought process, because Mercury and Venus will be conversing in this dual sign of Gemini. Okay, so that's one of the things. So that's more later in the month, and we're going to have more of a clue as we get closer and we feel the vibes of what Mercury and Venus are going to be like right before Mercury goes into retrograde. But in the meantime, Mercury is going into Gemini tomorrow, and Venus is going to go into Gemini on Saturday the 8th. And it's really interesting because, we're going to feel this flow of Gemini energy toward the end of the week. It's like, wow, things are gonna speed up a little bit. And right now, I don't see a lot of kerfuffle in the heavens. There's one thing that we need to be aware of tomorrow, and it's really the middle of the night in this region of the world, and that is the sun squaring Saturn. So let's take a step back a week to the full moon, and remember that the full moon was in Scorpio, the sun was in Taurus, and that the moon moved on. The moon moved on and really opposed Uranus and then squared Saturn. Okay, in the process overnight between the time of the full moon and the next day. And that's because the moon moves quickly. But then last week, just a couple days ago, I think it was Friday, the sun in Taurus conjunct Uranus. And the moon had already done that. Moon, a few hours after the full moon, was zip, Uranus, okay, bye. And maybe you didn't sleep well that night. And I had people telling me they didn't sleep well. And then there was the sun a few days later. So now the sun had to catch up. The sun was triggering that full moon all over again. Because if you listen to my Instagram, I said, hey, on Friday, if your full moon hangover, you thought it was over. Well, it's not, because the sun is triggering the Taurus Uranus that we experienced during the full moon. So, okay, so the moon went over Uranus. The moon, was opposing Uranus and did that thing with Uranus and then eventually squared Saturn. And so now the sun is doing the same thing, except it went to Uranus. It was a conjunction because the moon was in opposition. And then it went square Saturn. It's going to square Saturn in the wee small hours of this overnight tonight, between tonight and tomorrow. And so I've had a headache all day. I'm human too. I've had a headache all day. So there's a little bit of, I definitely have felt freedom and excitement and moving forward and like lightening up. And then, now my head's hurting a little bit and I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's just try to mellow through this, and not like put too much pressure on ourselves." So if you have a headache, it's probably still the headache from the hangover of the full moon, because the sun is part of that full moon, or it wouldn't be a full moon. And so the sun then dealt with Uranus the other day and is dealing with Saturn today. And Saturn's the one that's with the ideas that we should hold back. And really what's happening is the sun is coming up against its own brick, a brick wall. It's like, oh, but I expanded with Uranus, and oh, now I'm squaring Saturn and I have a headache, and maybe I shouldn't have done that, and maybe I shouldn't have spent that money, and maybe I shouldn't have, because it's Taurus, right? Maybe I shouldn't have spent that money. Maybe I shouldn't have bought that expensive new car. Maybe I should have opted for the lesser pricey or automobile, or that lesser pricey designer handbag, or handbags, Taurus, wallets, handbags, beautiful things. Maybe I shouldn't have spent so much money on the garden. But really, don't let Saturn bum you out, okay? Let Saturn do its thing, have its voice, and just move on. Mercury's going into Gemini. It's like, the leprechauns are coming out. The elves, the fairies, the little fellows are coming out. So let Saturn have its, put its hands on its hip for a moment and just say, okay, I hear you, but I got to do what I got to do. And I got to trust the universe. I got to trust the universe. And that's the one thing that sometimes Saturn does not allow us to do, is have faith. But we've got to have faith right now. So I think other than that, we've got a relatively lovely week. And, it's Taurus. It's, now the sun is past Uranus, and it'll be past Saturn tomorrow, and it'll just march on through Taurus. And Venus will do so too for the next week or so, a little bit less than a week, and she'll be in her own sign and happy. So if you bought yourself something beautiful, good. I'm glad. You should do that during Venus and Taurus. And enjoy it and wear it and use it and do what you need to do with it in good health. In the meantime, we have, some interesting other things happening, and Jupiter is winding down Aquarius. Now you're like, wait, I thought Jupiter was going to be there all year. Well, yeah, except it's going to tiptoe into Pisces and not stay there. So it's going to tiptoe into Pisces a little bit, starting Thursday the 13th. So Thursday the 13th in the evening in this region of the world, it will tiptoe into Pisces, and it will retrograde there in July, and then tiptoe out of Pisces back into Aquarius. It's only going to get to 2 degrees Pisces. But this, I feel this, and I can feel the energy shifting, and I feel optimistic Jupiter going towards a sign that it is co-ruler of, and that is very important. So if you are feeling a little lighter, yes, things are not as heavy as they have been. Things are, I think this last week of like full moon and stuff, I think we're getting a few weeks of a breather. And Jupiter goes into Pisces, and Jupiter ruled Pisces until planet Neptune was discovered. So we are experiencing, we're going to have a little, not only just a breather, but a blessing. And Jupiter going into Pisces is a blessing. And for the few months that it will be in Pisces and then eventually go back into Aquarius, I mean, it's still good in Aquarius. It's not a problem in Aquarius, but it loves Pisces. And so that's very nice. And I'm starting to feel the benefits of Jupiter in Pisces. Now, It still means you have to keep your head on. But it's great for meditation. It's great for healing. It's great for peace. It's great for freedom. It's great for feeling the faith, feeling the faith. And I just said, Saturn doesn't let you have faith, or doesn't really encourage faith so much, but you gotta stay strong on the faith end of things. And Jupiter in Pisces is going to help us do that. And I think while Jupiter's in Pisces, there's also hope. And we're, next week at this time when I'm talking to you, we're going to be days away from this. And I'll talk more about it next week, of course. But this is really important because we are looking at a time of hope. And everybody needs some hope right now. I mean, I think people have had it. People have had it. They, and again, I thought 2021 was going to be better. It's been tough. It's been tough. Costa Rica is shutting down again for the next week, unnecessary or, like things that are not essential, non-essentials, not unnecessary, but non-essentials, shutting down tomorrow for the next week, until, up to and including next Sunday the 9th. And so, if you wanted to go clothes shopping, you needed to do it by today. And they only told us this later on Thursday, right? So they let us know that we only had a couple days to go get things that were not essential. So if you needed to go get your hair done, I saw women getting their hair colored at a salon today on a Sunday, okay? That's not normal, but I'm sure salons were open today because they wanted to take advantage and serve their clients, because Costa Rica is shutting down for another week, and that's because the cases got higher here. So just when you think it's safe to go back in the water, here we are, Now, speaking of water, that's going to put more water in the sky. And right now, Mercury will go into Gemini. That's more air in the sky. Venus will go into Gemini, more air in the sky. There's no fire, with the exception of Chiron in Aries. Again, there's no fire. So Mars, our favorite fire planet, is in Cancer, and out of bounds. And so out of bounds, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, means that Mars is, by declination, not within the realms of what we call within bounds. Meaning Mars is going to go do whatever the hell he wants. Okay? He's like, the heck with this, man. I'm going to do what I want. And, Mars is very independent. So Mars is out of bounds, unpredictable in Cancer, a water sign that he's not terribly in love with, but he'll deal with it. And so dealing with home and family might be a little unpredictable and out of bounds Mars. And so Mars is going to be out of bounds for a little while. So don't even worry your little head about that. Just know that we have no fire in the sky. And right now the moon is in Aquarius. And it's going to be a few days before it gets into Aries. It'll go Aries later in the week. On Friday, it goes into Aries, in the early morning. Breakfast time, early morning at this region of the world. And it'll be in Aries for a couple days until Sunday when it goes into Taurus. And so, there's not much fire. Grab those Aries moments when the moon goes into Aries. Take your motivational energy and go those days. And if you need to be motivated about something, that's the day. And so what we're looking at is a relatively nice week, I think, so far. But the planets can prove me wrong. But, we've got Venus trining Pluto on Thursday. That's very nice because Venus will be at the end of Taurus, trining Pluto, so that's good. Today, Mercury's trining Pluto. Remember, they're not far from each other, Mercury and Venus. And so Mercury's trining Pluto. This is another nice, this good information, good things, good, good thoughts. And today Venus is doing a nice chat with Neptune, a nice sextile to Neptune. And other than that, like the sun is making its big aspect to Saturn, wee hours tomorrow. And, it looks like a relatively peaceful week. Venus is squaring Jupiter on Saturday. Before she goes into Gemini, her last hurrah is to square Jupiter. And, Mercury did that last night, or like wee hours, is going to do that wee hours tomorrow before it goes into Gemini. So, and Jupiter's, Jupiter is abundance. So, they're talking not in the most friendliest way, but they may be coming up against some things. And so we really have to just kind of appreciate Jupiter for where it is right now at the end of Aquarius and its place. It's really still expansive in that sign of innovation and genius and brilliance and independence and revolution. So Venus in Taurus is going to challenge that a little bit. Like, oh, I like it in Taurus, and I think things should stay the way they are. It's nice and secure and cozy and warm here. Yeah, sure. And then Jupiter's like, well, you got to expand your mind, girl. Expand your mind. So that's what's happening on Saturday. So a relatively nice week. We have a Taurus new moon on the 11th. We're going to talk next week. We're going to talk more about Jupiter going to Pisces and the Taurus new moon, because that Taurus new moon is special and it's going to be on the 11th. And guess why? Because it opens the eclipse period. Ta-da! Yes, we have eclipses coming. We have eclipses coming on the 26th of May. Yes, in this very month of May. Yes, we have the 26th, and then June 10th, there's an eclipse. So we don't need to talk about them just yet, but we should be aware of them, that there are eclipses coming, and that new moon, any lunation that precedes the eclipse opens the eclipse door. The period comes in. So enjoy this week, because this week is not full of rock and roll. Last week was more emotional. This week is going to be a little more nicely paced, and we're going to see once Mercury goes into Gemini what that feels like and how we're going to appreciate it for another 2 months plus, and enjoy this week, because this is not a week of a lot of like hard, intense aspects. It should be like information should flow freely. Information should be getting easier. It should be easier to communicate, and communicate as much as you can between now and the end of the month. Do all the good communicating now. You don't want to leave things and then go, oops, I forgot to ask you about that, sweetie. And it's retrograde and it's like, wah! So do the communicating you need to do. Think about it. Think about what you need to communicate and get aware of it, and do the communicating you need to do. And put the messages out there. And if you have important things to announce, do it. Do it this week. So I think one of the things that's important is just to enjoy this week ahead, because it should be a relatively low-key week. Please don't prove me wrong, planets. And we get to, experience like Pluto starting to shift a little bit as in its retrograde, but Pluto's starting to shift a little bit, and then we have that nice juicy Taurus new moon. So what's the advice for the week? I would say go about your business, do your things, enjoy the Taurus energy, because Venus is still in Taurus for another week, and it's a lovely, lovely place. And spread love, plant seeds. Whatever seeds you haven't planted, plant them. And just relax and enjoy and nurture yourself. Taurus is a nurturing sign. So, cuddle up with your favorite blanket, watch your favorite movie. It's a comfort food time. And so be comforted. Be comforted and be cozy, and enjoy your home and make it pretty and beautiful. And if you're a guy, it's, don't say to me, hey, I don't want to make my place beautiful, clean your house and enjoy your home, and, refine your life, and maybe buy yourself something a little sweet and kind. Be kind to yourself and others. And Tauruses are usually kind people. And so be kind to yourself. feel beautiful. Do something that makes your home beautiful, your garden beautiful. Go do something that plants a beautiful seed in the world, okay, for everyone else to enjoy. And be kind to others. There's not all sorts of rough aspects this week. There's no growling with Pluto going into the underworld. There's no Scorpio intense full moon. So, we're still juicy. We're just not as juicy as last week. And remember that, kindness goes a long way. And so be heartful, stay in your heart, be kind, and plant good seeds. Okay? And that's about it for the week. So, love yourself. I love all of you. I have gratitude for all of you listening. Have gratitude in your life. That's another lovely thing to plant this week. Remember, count your blessings and, make yourself a nice comfort food meal. Okay. Thank you for listening. I'm Deb McBride. You can find me on Instagram at thegoldenastrologer.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Deb Astrology. And I'm here every week. And my website is thegoldenastrologer.com. And you can book a session with me, book online. And if you need me, reach out. Info at The Golden Astrologer, or on Instagram. You can message me on Instagram. And we can chat, or you can book a session, or we can see what you need. And I am here to help. So be kind, spread seeds, plant seeds, have gratitude. Thank you for listening.